To teach your dog to do anything that's complicated, it's a series of steps. In other words, to get Mila to be able to put this object, take this object from one point and put it in, say, that container, that large cup, it's a series of steps. First, she was taught to hold the object. Then she was taught to drop the object. She was taught to take the object out of my hand. Then she was taught to take the object out of my hand at a distance. Then she was taught to pick the object up off the ground. And then she's doing a full retrieve. Then we had to teach her to cast. Teaching your dog casting is very simple. It's very straightforward. This is something that any dog can learn to do. If you were going to try and teach a chimp to do this, it would not go well. You can train a dog to do this very simply, but training a chimpanzee, they don't want to do it. There's all this thing about like, how smart is my dog? Don't worry about how smart the dog is. It's very windy, by the way. You should be worrying about, you know, how pleasant is your dog to be around? Does your dog want to be compliant? Is your dog friendly around people? That's what you want. You don't need a super smart dog that's a problem solver. That doesn't work good. That does not make for a good pet. Any dog can learn to do this. It's very simple. Now, I'm going to stand out in front of Mila, and I have two different objects, okay? They're both very similar. They have the same sort of value. They're a little bit different. One's bigger, one's smaller. They should be exactly the same, but this is what I grabbed. In other words, this is true if you're working your dog from piles too. You want to have them all the same objects because the dog might see one object as more inviting than the other. Does that make sense? Piles, what I mean is like at first you're throwing a retrieve, but then at a point you just put a pile of objects and the dog goes and gets them. So you want to use the same objects. Do you understand? You want to use the exact same sort of objects so that the dog doesn't have a tendency to go for one or the other. So it's very simple. So we take each object and put it out to the side like this. Watch. Sit. I put one here. Then I put one here. I don't really need a leash with Mila. I don't. She could do this without a leash, but when you first start doing this, your leash is your #1 tool. It's also called a lead. You can lead the dog with it. Use a leash, okay? Use a leash. And then, using exaggerated body language, I'm going to indicate to Mila which one to go get. And the exaggerated body language would be like this or like this. And then so it starts out being real exaggerated, like you'll be like that, and maybe even take a big step and get the dog, you know, figured out what you're trying to tell it to do. This is a visual language that you can interact with your dog with. They don't really understand language. You understand the point though. So you really exaggerate it at first, and then it can go into just something like this or like this. Now this is just casting right and left. There's also back casting where the dog, you raise your hand and the dog will spin around like that, or you raise this hand and the dog spins around like that and goes and gets something that's behind it. But this is just right and left casting, okay? So Mila's sitting there, she sees these objects, right? She knows that they're there. She's being good. Clean up your eyes a little bit, me. Sit. Sit. Good.
Drop.
Sit. Notice how she's looking at me, concentrating for me to give her direction. This is something your dog will love, and it will help. It'll definitely help. The more you can teach your dog, and the more your dog's following your direction, the less problems you're going to have with your dog. This is not only for a service dog or a retriever, this could be for your house dog. You notice that I'm not even saying good girl. I don't have to. Why? Because the retrieve is positive reinforcement. This notion that you have to train with food, you're just screwing the dog up. You can use anything that the dog likes. Drop. There you go. So now she knows direction. She understands direction, right and left. And maybe even going like this, just go forward. And that's what we're going to do here, is we're just going to move her forward, and she's going to hold the object. And the goal is for her to put it in that cup. And once she starts putting it in the cup, then we can get to the point where it's not just one cup, it's 2 cups. And she sits in front of me, and I'll go, put it in that cup or put it in that cup. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's about her going right or left and completing the task in a proper way. Now, full disclosure, I've been working with her, my dog Ike, and some of the other dogs, and training them to do this because it's fun. It's something that could be done in a backyard. In other words, you could have a series of containers and you could play like golf with the dog, and the dog needs to drop it into the container. Now, very important that she was taught drop meant to release into my hand. Okay, so we also had to teach her to drop the object, like drop it on the ground. So we did that too. Okay, so now let's check out her progress. She's doing real good. So I'll put Wheeler right here. Heel, sit. I put the object in her mouth, right? Wheeler, drop. No, hold. It's okay, she made a mistake. We'll bring her back to the point where we started. Hold. Drop. Good girl. Good girl. Watch this again. Now I have her on a leash, and I have her on a leash because she's just learning this. This is new to her. Anytime that it's something new, it makes it harder for the dog. Hold. Okay, heel. Drop. Good. Good girl. That's awesome. One more time. Feel it here. Hold. Hold. Sit. Feel it. No. No. Drop. Good. Good girl. That's good. Hold. So we've created a game by doing this. You shouldn't be training with food. That's so inappropriate. You're conditioning the dog to be excited, especially around food, but you're conditioning the dog to be excited. If she was calm, even sitting next to me as I bring the food down, it would excite the mind, and then you'd be reinforcing that excitement by using food. You can use anything that the dog likes, praise, toys, or just the act of doing something that the dog likes, like working. Here, heel. Sit. Hold. Feel it. Yes, you're a good girl. Will you pick that up for me? Hold. No, hold, you got it. Good girl. Will you drop it in there? Drop it in there again? Drop it. Good girl. Notice how I'm using this wall. I'm limiting the dog's options. Do you understand? We want her to make a straight path to the container. Do that. Use walls, fences, hallways. It's very helpful. Hold. Feel it. Good girl. Heel. Sit.